Some recommendations. When you're hiring, focus on the potential of the person you're hiring rather than on past accomplishments. In the US, it's very usual to talk about what have you done, what have you achieved. Yes, but sometimes the achievements is not what you need in your company. You don't want to hire a person that's ossified. Take Colin and Pora's recommendations very much into account. If you're not sure, keep looking. And if you don't have the ability to hire correctly, hire someone who does. Recruitment is too important to be taken lightly. You don't need to be an expert on all these things. You can hire them. Now, some obsolete topics that are in the book. First, is position design. You don't design a position. If you know what's good for you, first you find who and then you decide what. If you find a good person, hire them fast. You later find out what he can do with your organization. But don't lose a precious person just because you don't have the correct fit for them. Now, when we talk about work design, we must take into account skills development. How can we waste less time? We can talk about how do we develop certain specialized tools, but also remember that you want to pay only for the required skills and not for all the skills that they might have. Why? Because you're working and you're hiring according to what you're going to do. I know that this is contradictory with what I said previously regarding first who, then what. But that's one of the problems of working with humans. We are always very contradictory on one hand, and also it's an art, not exactly a science. So you need to know which parts of the material that I'm presenting to you will be able or do you want to use, depending always on reality. Praxis trumps theory. Now let's talk about work enlargement and enrichment. First, what is horizontal growth? That is to do more things. This is in contrast to vertical growth, where we tend to involve people or staff in planning and control issues, and it necessarily implies decentralization. That is, throwing at them the ability to take decisions and to assume the corresponding responsibility. We can also talk about posts rotation. That is to say, people who will be rotating along different posts, and that allows them not to get bored and always be delivering their best. The difference between work enlargement and work enrichment can be explained through this graph from the book from the Heizer and Render book. As you can see here, now let me put this the pen. When we're talking about work enlargement, we're growing up and down. Sorry, that's job enrichment. And when we're talking about job enlargement, we're talking about doing some more things. As you can see here with enriched job, we're planning. Let me use a little bit of the eraser. We're going into control and planning. They might end up essentially doing the same thing, but they are adding planning and control to the job. That's job enrichment. When we just do more things, that's job enlargement. Job enlargement is not as good for employee morale as job enrichment. Why? Because in the case of job enrichment, they tend to see that they are gaining control over what they are doing at their jobs. And this is very good for morale. Some of the psychological components in work design is to develop or use a variety of skills. Also to develop job identity. People who tend to identify themselves with their jobs tend to be more happy. That's closely related to work significance. If you're just putting a nut on a bolt, or a bolt on a nut, however you do it, that's not very significant. But if you see that it comes out with a small sign that says made by me, that's something that they like. In Mexico, for example, artisans tend to sign their work, especially if it's a hard one, because they are doing something that's out of the common, and that gives them a huge pride, and it makes them work better. Also, autonomy. If the person can do their job by themselves and decide things, that works very well. And finally, feedback. They must receive regular and strong feedback in order to know that they are working properly. All this, you can relate it directly to the processes. Remember owners, borders, etc. that we saw in previous videos? Well, here it comes, and it works. If you sit down and take it into account, you're bound to obtain good results. Our lesson will continue in the next video.